Since 2017, the Houston Astros have been in the World Series 4 times. They've won 2 championships, and over the last 6 full seasons, they've averaged 100 wins per year. So what the happened? As they come back from their long road trip in Mexico, the 9-19 Houston Astros are going to face the 19-9 Cleveland Guardians. I can tell you that's a situation that nobody expected at this point in the season. Even if they managed to take 1-2, heck, sweep the series against the Guardians, it's still been a hugely disappointing April for the Astros. So what happened? Can they right the ship? And what does this mean for fantasy? Let's start with the first problem that happened before the season really began, and that's injuries to their starting rotation. Justin Verlander, of course, began the season on the IL, spent 3 weeks there, just now has come back. Their then ace, Framber Valdez, spent almost 4 weeks on the IL. He just came back as well. And then there's all those rotation pieces that haven't even pitched this year. Christian Javier, who did have a breakout season 2 years ago, he's been out since mid-April. Jose Urquidy, Luis Garcia, yet to pitch this year. And then, of course, there's Lance McCullers, who, is he ever not on the injured list? Every team has injuries, especially a pitcher, but this is a whole 6-man staff that has been on the IL at various times, and some of these guys are not even coming back this year. That's a big reason why the Astros are now 26th in team ERA, and some of the young guys that are expected to fill that void, like Hunter Brown and Spencer Arrighetti, have been just outright terrible. Just as important, maybe worse, factor number 2, their bullpen has imploded. This was supposed to be a major strength for the team this year, even more so than before, because they added top-tier closer in free agency, Josh Hader. Well, Josh Hader is doing exactly what he did when he first got traded to San Diego. He's looking like he doesn't want to be there. Over his first 10 2/3 innings so far this season, Hader's given up 12 hits and 9 earned runs. What about former closer, veteran Ryan Presley, who's been so dependable over the years? Somehow he's been worse. Also in 10 2/3 innings, he's given up 15 hits and 8 earned runs. And it keeps going. Brian Abreu, dependable setup man who looked great last season, is deciding to have his worst season too. 14 2/3 innings, he's given up 14 hits and 7 earned runs. Sometimes it's just infectious. When one guy is having a bad year, maybe it just is spreading throughout that entire pitching staff. But it's not just the pitching, it's the offense too. The Astros only 18th in runs scored right now, and a big part of that reason is the aging veterans that are in that lineup. They finally went ahead and did the difficult thing that was the right thing to do. They demoted veteran Jose Abreu. You don't see that very often, but he actually consented because, there was no other choice unless they were just going to get rid of him outright. He was batting .099 on the season. Not a single home run in 22 games, and the guy who used to be called Mr. RBI has only driven in 3 runs. Moving him down in the order didn't help. Giving him days off didn't help. It seems at this point, honestly, it's sad to say, but Abreu might be ready to hang him up. We can't just say this is a cold start or a slump or something. He was bad most of last season until the very end, but there's bad and then there's extremely awful. He's in the first percentile, the very bottom barrel for xWOBA, XBA, X-slugging, barrel rate, almost everything that matters. But he's not the only guy. Alex Bregman, who's been the staple of that lineup for years, he's not having his worst season, but it definitely doesn't look like Bregman-like numbers. And you've got to wonder if he's losing some of his power because he's shown none so far in 2024. Only 7 RBIs, and all the power numbers are down across the board. 10th percentile in expected slugging and barrel rate, exit velocity, hard hit rate, all well below league average, and he's not making up for it by getting singles and at least keeping afloat with the batting average. His batting average right now, .216, also well below league average. This is concerning because this is a player who not only isn't injured, he's never injured. That's one of his calling cards, is he goes out there and plays nearly an entire season. So nothing there. He's only 30 years old. He should not have lost that much power at this point. Jose Abreu is definitely older. When both your corner infielders, who are projected to be some of your top power bats, are struggling so bad and giving you no power, that's going to hurt the entire order. Then there's one more factor to consider. Is the manager to blame here? Remember, longtime skipper Dusty Baker, who spent 4 seasons with the Astros and helped them get one of those rings, he stepped down before the season, so they have a first-year skipper in Joe Espada. Now, Espada came from within the organization, seems to be well liked by the players, coaches. I don't think there's any riff here. We haven't heard anything that it directly has to do with him, and we can't really point to any specific decisions he's made or, anything that would lead to blame him directly. You just gotta wonder if maybe a different vibe in the clubhouse, maybe some guys getting a little too comfortable or not comfortable enough, whatever the case is. It's possible. I don't think that's the reason, but you also just can't outright ignore the fact that as soon as Dusty left, they're struggling like they haven't for almost a decade. So here's the million-dollar question. Will the Houston Astros, a proud franchise who still assumed that they were going to be contenders this year and maybe will still get there, do they have a chance to really turn this thing around? It's easy to just blindly say, yeah, of course. They still have most of the same guys. This is a team that always wins. It doesn't always happen, but I will say here are some reasons you could be optimistic. First of all, let's start with, I think the biggest underachiever here, to put it nicely, is Josh Hader. What's going on? This guy should be dominant, one of the best closers in the game, and he's looked awful. Well, I already mentioned this same thing happened when he moved, first going from Milwaukee to San Diego. It looked like a horrible move because his ERA was through the roof. It's exactly what we're seeing now. Maybe this is a guy who just takes a long time to acclimate to a new environment. Now, he only had post-All-Star break, and then the next year with San Diego, he was lights out again. Maybe post-All-Star break, which is a little farther off than we'd like, but still, second half, maybe even just midsummer, we'll see Hader start to figure it out. He is still punching out batters at least. Again, there's no other reason for concern here. He's just had few bad outings. Presley and Abreu issues, I'm not really sure. These guys should be fine. It is early. I will say we'll still give some benefit of the doubt because small sample sizes, a couple of bad appearances can inflate those ratios, but they're giving up a lot of hits. Maybe it's just this whole team struggle thing, right? When teams are hot, they're hot. When they're not, they're not. And you've got to think, even if these guys all get right, this is a team that definitely, if they're in contention, would make a move to bolster that bullpen and or their rotation. So the pitching will get better. As far as the starting pitchers, Verlander is back. He looks sharp, so that's a huge relief. Framber is also back. He's a guy who could be a frontline starter on any team. As long as those guys stay healthy, this rotation should be in good enough shape. I will say I'm very disappointed in Hunter Brown. Thought he would take a huge step forward this year. Instead, he's taken some steps back. I am not yet sold on the fact that he is going to do any better than he has, but of course it is still possible. And where would this team be without Ronel Blanco? Man, their numbers would look a lot worse. Say, with those injuries, it looks like Blanco's going to stick. He's been good now for several starts. I'm a believer here. I will say Verlander and Valdez, just hold tight if you have them. Possibly even buy low on Verlander if some people are scared about that early season injury. It seems like he's over. Ronel Blanco is a firm hold. As far as Hunter Brown, like I said, I'm not going to call him a buy low at this point. And then with Hader, I'll say the same thing. I am going to eventually start to see if I can put feelers out there, if someone's willing to move on from him. But let's wait a little bit longer until he really feels nice and cozy there in Houston. Now, as far as the offense, well, they've already made one very important move. That's moving Jose Abreu not just out of the lineup, but really off the roster for the time being was essential. They had to show some sense of urgency. Joe Espada said it himself. That's what this team needs, maybe a little bit more urgency. So showing that they can do that to a veteran like Abreu maybe will pump up the other guys who need to get it going, like Bregman. I will still say this. I think if you can get anything for Bregman right now, I would do it because I'm not going to stay patient and wait for him to turn it around. I mean, no power. Okay, fine. He will hit some home runs at one point, but he's past his prime. This is a guy where we're looking at 20 home runs. Maybe is his ceiling these days. That's barely what he's getting to the last couple of seasons. No speed to speak of. The average will still be good, but altogether, I just don't think we're seeing the same Alex Bregman that we used to. And this team did just get another spark, at least they hope it will. Joey Loperfido, who was lighting it up in the minors, leading AAA in home runs with 13 before finally getting the call. I mean, this guy is going to be better no matter what than what they were getting at first base. Let's see how he does. He could wind up being a major spark plug in that lineup. And down the road, a little bit later, they might get some help from a guy like Jacob Melton, who is at Double-A right now. The rest of the guys there, like Altuve and Pena and even Chas McCormick, they're doing fine. Altuve and Pena have been actually great so far. They're carrying this offense. Chaz will get it going. I think he'll be okay. You can pick him up if he's out there. Nothing spectacular, but, he's not supposed to be one of the studs of this offense. The other guys will get it going, and if not, there should be somebody like Lo Perfido to help pick up the slack. While I don't think this is going to be, a banner year for the Astros, maybe just losing to their rival in-state Texas Rangers last year took something out of them. There's a lot going on under the surface here, so you have to identify the reasons. I do believe the Houston Astros pitching will improve significantly. I think the hitting will improve a little bit, but you always have to look at each player at case-by-case basis to see, are they going to be good for your fantasy team or not? That's why we do waiver wire, buy low, streamers, and everything you need to win in fantasy to break down all the players you need to know about. If you hadn't subscribed yet, do it now.